They said the body would be the worst part. They said Damian Blackwood, the most feared mafia boss in the city, had been lying in a coma for 3 years, trapped in a body that refused to die and refused to wake. His flesh had wasted away despite the best medical care. His skin was pale as wax, his muscles atrophied, his face a hollow mask of what had once been a terrifyingly handsome man. Some said he wasn't truly alive at all, just a corpse that hadn't stopped breathing yet. Servants whispered when they entered his private wing. Guards held their breath near his door. The medical team rotated shifts so no one had to spend too long in his presence. So when Oliver Hart was brought through the gates of the Blackwood estate, he expected horror. He expected decay. He expected a monster. 3 days earlier, Oliver had still been in his pack's small archive room, copying old trade records by firelight while his grandfather slept in the next room. His parents had died when he was young, and his grandfather had raised him with old books, quiet discipline, and one rule: never let anyone make you believe your mind is a burden. Oliver had believed that for most of his life. He remembered everything he saw: pages, maps, medical diagrams, treaty clauses, herbal formulas, old laws that even the elders forgot. The pack came to him whenever something went wrong: a crop failure, a dispute, a missing contract, a sick child. Oliver always found the answer. And Julian Hart, the pack's alpha heir, had learned to use that. At first, Julian's attention had felt like love. He praised Oliver's mind, brought him gifts, asked for his opinion in council meetings. Then slowly, Oliver realized Julian did not love him like a person. He valued him like a weapon. That truth became impossible to ignore the night Julian came home with hunger in his eyes. "The Blackwood family is offering a fortune," Julian said, pacing across the room. "Land, money, influence, all for one Omega willing to marry their comatose alpha and stay beside him until he dies, or until they produce an heir." Oliver closed the book in his hands. "No, Oliver," Julian stopped. "You haven't even heard me out. I heard enough." His grandfather coughed weakly from the next room, and Julian's gaze flicked toward the door. That single glance made Oliver's blood turn cold. "You should think carefully," Julian said, his voice softer now and far more dangerous. "Your grandfather is comfortable here. Warm room, medicine, food, protection. But winter is coming, Oliver. The old storage wing is not kind to fragile bones." Oliver stood slowly. "Do not threaten him. I am giving you a choice." "No, you are selling me." Julian stepped closer. "You are the only person who can survive that place. You always solve things. You always come through. Go to the Blackwood estate. Marry the alpha. Stay beside him until he wakes or dies. And when the reward comes, our pack will become untouchable." Oliver stared at him and finally saw the truth, sharp and merciless. Julian did not want him to comfort a dying man. Julian wanted him to wait for profit. And then Julian leaned closer and whispered the words that burned themselves into Oliver's memory. "Do not try to save him. If there is a way to make his end come sooner, find it." The next morning, Julian announced before the pack that Oliver had volunteered. He spoke of sacrifice, duty, and honor. Then he severed their mate bond in front of everyone, claiming it would help Oliver focus on his new duties. The pain came sharp and clean, like a thread being cut inside his chest. Oliver waited for grief. Instead, he felt emptiness, and then something worse: relief. From Julian. He left that afternoon without looking back. Now, standing before the doors of Damian Blackwood's private chamber, Oliver held a cloth soaked in bitter herbs against his nose. Beside him stood Elena Blackwood, Damian's younger sister, the one who had made the desperate offer to every pack in the region. Elena looked younger than Oliver expected, but her face carried the exhaustion of someone who had been afraid for too long. "You do not have to go in unprepared," Elena said quietly. The first breath can be difficult. Oliver's eyes hardened. I did not come here for comfort. Elena flinched, but she did not argue. She only nodded to the guards. The doors opened. Oliver braced himself. But the smell never came. No rot. No death. No choking wave of decay. Only cold air, old stone, and beneath it something strange. A heavy alpha scent, damaged and unstable, but not disgusting. It reminded Oliver of winter woods after a storm, sharp and cold, buried beneath pain. The room was dim, curtains drawn against the afternoon light. Machines beeped softly in the corner. At the center of it, propped against pillows on a massive bed, lay Damien Blackwood. The rumors had not lied about his condition. His arms were thin beneath the blankets, his face pale and gaunt. Tubes connected him to various monitors. His body looked trapped in a war against itself. But his face was not monstrous. His eyes were closed, but even in stillness, his features held the sharp lines of a predator. Even bedridden, even ruined by sickness, Damien Blackwood still felt dangerous. Oliver moved closer, drawn by something he didn't understand. Why am I here? He thought. Why did I agree to this? But he knew the answer. His grandfather, Julian's threat, the pack that had never truly been his home. He reached the side of the bed and looked down at the alpha who was supposed to be his husband. Damien Blackwood did not stir. He did not react. He simply lay there, suspended between life and death. Oliver sat down in the chair beside the bed. He had no idea what to do next. For 3 days, Oliver did nothing but watch. He watched the nurses change Damien's IVs. He watched the doctors check his vitals. He watched Elena sit in the corner, her face a mask of controlled worry. And he watched Damien, the rise and fall of his chest, the occasional twitch of his fingers, the way his scent would spike and then fade for no apparent reason. On the 4th day, something changed. Oliver had fallen asleep in the chair, exhausted from his own restless thoughts. When he woke, Damien's hand was wrapped around his wrist. Not painfully, just there. Oliver froze. The alpha's eyes were still closed, his breathing still steady, but his grip was unmistakable. Oliver tried to pull away, but Damien's fingers tightened. Don't. The word was barely a whisper, rough from disuse. Oliver's heart slammed against his ribs. You're awake. Damien's eyes opened slowly, dark, unfocused, but undeniably alive. He stared at Oliver for a long moment, something flickering in his gaze. Who are you? Oliver swallowed. Your husband. They married us 3 days ago, while you were unconscious. Damien's jaw tightened. They forced you. It wasn't a question. Oliver nodded. Damien's grip loosened, but he didn't let go. I'm sorry. The apology shocked Oliver more than anything else. He had expected anger, bitterness, resentment, not compassion from a man who had been robbed of his autonomy for 3 years. I'm Oliver, he said quietly. Damien. The alpha's lips twitched, not quite a smile, but close. I know. I heard them talking about you. Before I could open my eyes. Damien's gaze drifted to the window. I could hear everything. The doctors, my sister, the nurses. I just couldn't move. Oliver felt a chill run down his spine. For 3 years. 3 years. Damien's voice was hollow, trapped in my own body, listening to everyone discuss my death. Why didn't you give up? Damien looked back at him. Because my sister didn't. And because, he paused. Because I knew something was coming. Something I had to wake up for. What? Damien's eyes held his. You. The days that followed fell into an uneasy rhythm. Damien's condition improved slowly. He could sit up now, eat solid food, hold conversations without exhausting himself. But his body still failed him in unpredictable ways. Some days he seemed almost healthy, other days he couldn't lift his arms. The doctors were baffled. The curse, if that's what it was, defied every treatment they tried. But Oliver had begun to notice something strange. Damien's health seemed to correlate with his proximity. When Oliver stayed close, the alpha's vitals stabilized. When Oliver left, they faltered. "You're doing something to me," Damien said one evening, watching Oliver read in the chair beside his bed. "I'm not doing anything. Your scent." Damien's eyes were dark. "It calms me. I don't know why." Oliver looked up from his book. "My scent is weak. Julian said it was defective." "Julian is an idiot." Damien's voice was rough. "Your scent isn't weak. It's focused, targeted." He paused. "You're a moon wolf." Oliver frowned. "Eh, what?" Damien struggled to sit up higher, wincing at the movement. "Moon wolves. They're rare, almost extinct. Their pheromones don't attract alphas the way normal omegas do. Instead, they heal. They stabilize. They bring peace to the broken." "That sounds like a story." "It's not." Damien's expression was serious. "My grandmother was one. She died when I was young, but I remember her scent. It was like yours. Calm, steady, like moonlight on still water." Oliver set down his book. "If that's true, why did Julian reject me?" "Because he didn't know what you were. He only knew that your scent didn't affect him the way he expected. He assumed you were defective." Damien's jaw tightened. He was wrong. Oliver felt something shift in his chest. Not trust, not yet, but hope. "If I'm a moon wolf, can I heal you?" Damien was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I don't know, but I'd like you to try." Oliver threw himself into research. He spent hours in the Blackwood Library, devouring medical texts, old journals, and family records. Damien's grandmother had left behind notes, fragments of information about moon wolf abilities and the curse that plagued the Blackwood bloodline. The curse, Oliver discovered, was not a disease. It was a failed regeneration cycle. Damien's body kept trying to heal itself from an old wound, one that had never properly closed, and kept failing. The energy required was slowly killing him. But a moon wolf's pheromones could stabilize the process, could complete it. "The wound," Oliver asked one afternoon, "how did you get it?" Damien's expression darkened. "An assassination attempt. 3 years ago. A rival family sent a poison blade. It should have killed me. Instead, it left me like this." "Who sent it?" "Someone in my own organization. We never found out who." Oliver filed that information away. "If I can stabilize your regeneration, you'll heal. But it will take time. And proximity." "How much proximity?" Oliver's cheeks flushed. "Daily contact. Scent. Touch. Possibly more." Damien's eyes held his. "Whatever it takes." The process was slow and intimate. Oliver sat beside Damien's bed every day, letting his scent fill the room. He held Damien's hand, pressed his wrist to the alpha's nose, let his pheromones wrap around them both. At first, nothing happened. Then, gradually, Damien's vitals improved. His color returned. The tremors in his hands faded. He could walk now, shakily, with support, but independently. 3 years, Damien murmured, standing by the window for the first time since Oliver's arrival. "I never thought I'd see the sun again." Oliver watched him, something warm unfurling in his chest. "You're not healed yet." "No, but I'm closer than I've been in years." Damien turned to face him. "Because of you. It's not me. It's the moon wolf thing. It's you." Damien crossed the room slowly, his steps uneven but determined. He stopped in front of Oliver, close enough that Oliver could feel the heat of his body. "You could have left. You could have done nothing. You could have let me die. But you didn't. I made a deal. You made a choice." Damien's hand came up to cup Oliver's face. "A choice to stay, to help, to care." Oliver's breath caught. "I don't even know you." "Then let me change that." Damien's thumb brushed Oliver's cheek. "Let me show you who I am. Not the mafia boss. Not the sick man. Just Damien." Oliver should have pulled away, should have reminded himself that this was a transaction, a deal, a means to an end. But Damien's eyes were so steady, so sure, and for the first time in his life, Oliver felt seen. Okay, he whispered. The weeks that followed were a revelation. Damien recovered steadily, his strength returning day by day. He walked without assistance now, could lift weights, could hold his own in conversations with his lieutenants. The curse was lifting. And Oliver found himself falling. Not because of obligation, not because of the deal, because Damien was kind, patient, attentive. He asked about Oliver's grandfather, about his childhood, about the books he loved. He remembered every detail. He made Oliver feel like he mattered. One evening, as they sat on the balcony overlooking the estate, Damien took Oliver's hand. I want to mark you, he said quietly. Oliver's heart raced. What? Not a mating bite. Not yet. But a claim, a temporary one. So everyone knows you're under my protection. Damien's eyes searched his face. Only if you want to. Oliver thought about Julian. About the way Julian had severed their bond without hesitation, without guilt. About the years he'd spent feeling like a tool instead of a person. Yes, Oliver said. Damien's smile was soft. He pulled Oliver closer, tilted his head, and pressed his lips to the scent gland on Oliver's neck. The touch was gentle, almost reverent. Then his teeth grazed the skin, and Oliver gasped as heat flooded through him. The mark was small, barely visible. But Oliver felt it, a thread connecting them, warm and steady. Mine, Damien murmured against his skin. Oliver shivered. Yours. Julian arrived 3 days later. Oliver was in the garden when he heard the commotion, raised voices, the screech of tires, the heavy thud of car doors. He looked up to see Julian storming across the lawn, his face twisted with fury. Oliver stood, his heart pounding. What are you doing here? Taking you home. Julian grabbed his arm. This farce is over. Before Oliver could respond, a hand closed around Julian's wrist, twisting it away. Damien stood behind Oliver, his expression cold. He's not going anywhere. Julian's eyes widened. You're awake. I've been awake for weeks. Damien's voice was ice. And Oliver is my husband. My Omega. You have no claim on him. He was mine first. He was never yours. Damien stepped in front of Oliver, shielding him. You used him. You threatened his grandfather. You sold him to me for profit. You don't get to pretend you care now. Julian's face flushed. This isn't over. Yes, Damien said. It is. Guards moved forward, flanking Julian. He struggled, cursed, but they dragged him away. Oliver watched, his hands shaking. Damien turned to him. Are you all right? I'm fine. Oliver's voice wavered. He's always been like that. Controlling. Manipulative. I didn't see it until I left. You see it now. Yes. Oliver looked up at Damien. I see it now. The next day, Julian's pack filed a formal complaint with the council, claiming that Oliver had been coerced into the marriage and that Damien had manipulated him. The council called for an emergency hearing. Oliver stood beside Damien in the great hall, facing a panel of elders who looked at him with a mixture of pity and suspicion. Julian sat across the room, his lawyers flanking him. Oliver, Julian said, his voice smooth. You don't have to do this. Come home. I'll take care of you. You never took care of me. Oliver's voice was steady. You used me. You threatened my grandfather. You severed our bond without a second thought. Julian's expression flickered. I was trying to protect you. You were trying to protect yourself. The room murmured. Damien's hand found Oliver's, squeezing gently. I'm staying here, Oliver said. With Damien. Not because I was forced. Because I choose to. Julian's face went pale. You don't mean that. I do. Oliver looked at Damien, at the man who had given him safety, respect, love. I've never meant anything more. The council deliberated for an hour. When they returned, their decision was unanimous. Oliver was free to stay. Julian's claims were dismissed. His pack was fined for coercion and harassment. As they left the hall, Julian tried to approach Oliver one last time. Damien stepped between them. Touch him again, Damien said softly, and I'll end you. Julian backed away, his face twisted with rage and defeat. That night, Damien led Oliver to his private chambers. The room no longer smelled of sickness, only cedarwood and warmth. "I don't want to rush you," Damien said, "but I need you to know I love you. Not because of the deal, not because of the Moonwolf bond, because you're you." Oliver's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too." Damien kissed him then, soft, slow, full of promise. When they finally parted, he rested his forehead against Oliver's. "I want to bond with you. Permanently. If you're ready." Oliver thought about his grandfather, about the years of loneliness, about Julian's cruelty. Then he thought about Damien, his patience, his kindness, his unwavering support. "I'm ready." Damien tilted Oliver's head, exposing his neck. He kissed the scent gland, then bit down, gently at first, then harder as the bond took hold. Oliver gasped as heat flooded through him, connecting them in a way he'd never experienced. When Damien pulled back, his eyes were bright. "Mine," he said. "Yours," Oliver agreed. Months passed. The curse faded completely. Damien regained his strength, his health, his position. And Oliver found his purpose. He established a sanctuary for orphaned shifters, using his knowledge and his gift to heal those who had been broken by the old ways. Damien supported him, funding the project, protecting it from those who would see it destroyed. "Happy?" Damien asked one evening, as they stood on the balcony of their home. Oliver looked at him, at the man who had been left for dead, who had fought his way back to life, who had chosen love over revenge. "Happy," Oliver said. "Happier than I ever thought I could be." Damien pulled him close. "Good. Because this is just the beginning." The stars shone overhead, and for the first time in his life, Oliver felt truly free. He had been sacrificed to a dead Mafia Alpha, but the Alpha had never been dead, and somewhere between the curse and the healing, Oliver had found something he never expected. He had found love. And this time, it was not a cage. It was a choice. Freely given. Forever kept. The first year of Oliver's new life passed in a blur of healing and discovery. Damien's recovery accelerated beyond all medical expectations. The curse that had haunted the Blackwood bloodline for generations seemed to have lifted completely, and with it, Damien's strength returned tenfold. He no longer needed assistance walking. He no longer tired easily. He was, finally, the man he had been before the assassination attempt, and perhaps even stronger. But Oliver noticed something else. The Moon-Wolf bond that connected them was not just healing Damien. It was changing him, softening edges that had once been sharp, making him more patient, more present, more human. "You're staring again," Damien said one morning, catching Oliver's gaze across the breakfast table. "I'm admiring." "Same thing." "No. Staring is passive. Admiring is active. There's intention behind it." Damien's smile was warm. "You're impossible. And yet you love me. And yet I love you." The sanctuary Oliver had dreamed of began to take shape on the eastern grounds of the Blackwood estate. Damien had insisted on funding the project, and Oliver had reluctantly agreed, not because he wanted Damien's money, but because he knew the work was too important to delay. They called it Moonhaven. It started small, a single building with room for a dozen orphan pups. But word spread quickly, and soon, shifters from across the territory were bringing their lost, their broken, their unwanted to Oliver's door. Oliver accepted them all. "I can't heal everyone," he told Damien one night, exhaustion heavy in his voice. "You can try," Damien replied. "That's more than most people do." The first pup arrived in winter. He was a small Omega, barely 3 years old, with silver fur and terrified eyes. His pack had been killed in a rogue attack, and he had been found hiding in the ruins of their den, too frightened to shift back to human form. Oliver sat with him for hours, not speaking, just present. He let his scent fill the room, calm and steady, like moonlight on still water. He didn't reach for the pup, didn't try to touch him, didn't demand anything. He just stayed. The pup's trembling slowed. His breathing evened. And after what felt like an eternity, he shifted, small limbs reshaping, fur receding, until a pale boy with silver hair lay curled on the bed. Oliver smiled. "Hi there. I'm Oliver. What's your name?" The boy's lips moved. No sound came out. Then, finally, a whisper. "Soren." "Soren." Oliver repeated the name gently. "You're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." Soren stared at him for a long moment. Then he crawled across the bed and collapsed into Oliver's arms, his small body shaking with sobs. Oliver held him, and he didn't let go. Over the following months, more pups arrived. Some came alone, wandering out of the forest as if drawn by an invisible thread. Some were brought by frightened parents who could no longer care for them. Some were rescued from abusive packs by Damien's network of informants. Each one was different. Each one was broken in their own way. But they all responded to Oliver the same way, with trust, with hope, with the slow, hesitant healing that only came from being truly seen. Oliver learned their names, their stories, their fears. He learned which ones needed touch and which ones needed space. He learned that silence was sometimes more healing than words, and that presence was sometimes more powerful than any medicine. And Damien learned too. He learned to soften his voice when he entered the nursery. He learned to ask permission before touching the pups. He learned that strength wasn't always about control. Sometimes it was about restraint. Uncle Damien, one of the pups, a feisty brown wolf named Trouble, said one afternoon, "Why do you smell like trees?" Damien looked down at her, surprised. "I smell like trees?" "Yeah, like the forest after rain. It's nice." Damien glanced at Oliver, who was trying not to smile. "Thank you, Trouble." "You're welcome." She trotted off to torment one of the other pups. "She likes you," Oliver said. "She likes everyone." "No, she doesn't. She growled at the head of security for an hour yesterday." Damien's lips twitched. "I'm special. You're her alpha. Pups know." The words settled between them, heavier than Oliver had intended. Damien's expression softened. "I never thought I'd have this," he said quietly. "A family. A home. People who depend on me for something other than fear. You have it now. Because of you." Damien pulled Oliver into his arms. "Everything I have now is because of you." Peace, Oliver learned, was never permanent. A year after the sanctuary opened, a new threat emerged. A rival mafia family, the Volkovs, had been watching Damien's recovery with growing unease. They had assumed he would die, that his territory would be up for grabs, that they could move in and take what they wanted. Now, with Damien stronger than ever and a moon wolf at his side, their plans were crumbling. "They're going to make a move," Damien said, his expression grim. "Sooner rather than later." Oliver's stomach tightened. "What kind of move?" "An attack. Probably on the sanctuary. They know it's your weakness." "It's not a weakness. It's your heart." Damien took his hand. "And they'll target it because they know I'll do anything to protect you." "Then we protect it together." Damien nodded slowly. Together. The assault came at midnight. Oliver was in the nursery, reading to Soren and a few of the younger pups, when the first explosion rocked the estate. The lights flickered, then died. Alarms blared. "Stay here," Oliver told the pups, his voice steady despite the fear pounding in his chest. "Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or Damien." Soren grabbed his hand. "Papa, I'll be back. I promise." Oliver ran. The grounds were chaos. Damien's security team was already engaged with the intruders, gunfire and snarls filling the night air. Oliver could smell the enemy's pheromones, aggressive, cruel, unfamiliar. He found Damien near the main gate, fighting off 3 attackers at once. Despite his recovery, despite his strength, he was outnumbered. Oliver moved without thinking. He let his scent open, fully, completely. Not a command, not a weapon. An invitation. Calm. Steady. Like moonlight on still water. The effect was immediate. The intruders faltered, confused, their aggression wavering. Damien took advantage, disarming them, taking them down. More were coming. Oliver could feel them, dozens of them, pouring through the breach in the wall. "Oliver, get back!" Damien shouted. But Oliver didn't move. He couldn't, because behind the intruders, he sensed something else, something familiar. Julian. His former fiancée stepped through the smoke, his face twisted with hatred. "You should have come home when I asked." Oliver's blood ran cold. "You're behind this." "Damien took everything from me. My pack. My reputation. You." Julian's voice cracked. "I'm taking it back." Damien stepped in front of Oliver. "You'll die trying." "Maybe." Julian smiled, cold, cruel. "But I'll take you with me." The battle that followed was brutal. Damien fought like a man possessed, his strength fueled by desperation and fury. Julian was no match for him. Not really. But he had brought backup, and the backup was relentless. Oliver stayed back, using his scent to disrupt the attackers, to give Damien openings. But there were too many. He could feel his energy waning, his pheromones thinning. Then something changed. From the nursery, a howl rose, not of fear, but of fury. Oliver turned to see Soren standing in the doorway, his silver hair wild, his eyes blazing. Behind him, the other pups had shifted, their small forms bristling with protective rage. They charged. The intruders, caught off guard by the sudden assault, stumbled back. The pups were small, but they were fierce, and they were many. They bit and clawed and snarled, driving the enemy back toward the breach. And in the chaos, Damien found his opening. He disarmed Julian, pinned him to the ground, and held a blade to his throat. "It's over," Damien said. Julian's face was pale, his bravado gone. "Kill me, then." "No." Damien's voice was cold. "You'll face the council. You'll answer for your crimes. And you'll rot in prison knowing that Oliver chose me, that he'll never choose you." The guards moved in, taking Julian into custody. The remaining intruders surrendered. Oliver stood in the center of the carnage, his pups gathered around him, and wept. Not from sadness, from relief. The estate took weeks to repair. The sanctuary was damaged, but not destroyed. The pups were shaken, but unharmed. And Julian was in custody, awaiting trial. Oliver visited him once. Not because he wanted to, because he needed closure. Julian sat in his cell, his face haggard, his eyes hollow. When he saw Oliver, something flickered in his expression. Hope, maybe, or regret. "You came." "I came to say goodbye." Oliver kept his distance. "Not because I forgive you. Because I'm done." "Oliver, you threatened my grandfather. You sold me to a stranger. You tried to destroy the only home I've ever known." Oliver's voice was steady. "I don't hate you. I don't love you. I don't feel anything for you at all. And that's the worst punishment I can give." Julian's face crumpled. "I loved you." "No." Oliver turned to leave. "You loved what I could do for you. There's a difference." He walked out without looking back. A month after the attack, Damien asked Oliver to bond with him publicly, not just as a private claim, but as a declaration to the world. "I want everyone to know," Damien said, "that you're mine, that I'm yours, that nothing will ever tear us apart." Oliver's heart swelled. Yes. The ceremony was held in the garden of the estate, beneath a canopy of flowers and fairy lights. The pups served as ring-bearers, each carrying a small velvet pillow. Soren walked at the front, his silver hair bright in the afternoon sun. Damien's lieutenants stood in attendance, their hard faces softened by genuine happiness. Elena, Damien's sister, cried through the entire ceremony. Even Marcus, Damien's stoic second-in-command, wiped his eyes when Oliver said his vows. "I promise to stay," Oliver said. "Not because I'm obligated. Not because I made a deal. Because I love you. Because you're my home." Damien's voice was rough with emotion. I promised to protect you, to cherish you, to be the man you deserve. He paused. I was dead for 3 years, Oliver. You woke me up. Not just my body, my heart, my soul. I was dead, and you brought me back to life. They kissed, and the pups howled, and the world seemed to hold its breath. 2 years after the bonding ceremony, Oliver discovered he was pregnant. The news was met with joy and fear. Moon wolf pregnancies were rare, and the Blackwood bloodline had its own complications. But Damien refused to let Oliver face it alone. I'll be with you every step, Damien promised. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. The pregnancy was difficult. Oliver spent months on bed rest, his body struggling to support the life growing inside him. But Damien never left his side. He brought him food, read to him, held him when the fear became too much. The pups took turns keeping Oliver company. Soren read him stories. Trouble brought him stolen pastries. Shade, the tiny black pup who had grown into a fierce guardian, lay at the foot of the bed and growled at anyone who came too close. You're going to spoil this baby before they're even born, Oliver said, laughing. Good, Damien replied. They deserve to be spoiled. The baby was born on a stormy spring night. A boy, healthy and strong, with Damien's dark hair and Oliver's green eyes. They named him Alexander, Alex for short. The heir, Damien whispered, holding his son for the first time. No, Oliver said. Our son. Damien looked at him, tears in his eyes. Our son. The years passed. Moonhaven grew. More pups arrived. More healers came. More lives were saved. Oliver's reputation spread across the territories, and soon, shifters from distant lands were seeking his help. But Oliver never forgot where he came from. He never forgot the pack that had rejected him, the alpha who had used him, the family that had sold him. He used those memories not as weapons, but as reminders of what he had survived, of what he had become, of what he could help others survive. Damien stood by him through it all. His empire had changed, less focused on violence, more focused on protection. He had become a different kind of king, one who ruled not through fear, but through loyalty. You've softened me, Damien said one evening, watching Alex play in the garden with the pups. You've strengthened me, Oliver replied. We balance each other. Damien pulled him close. I love you. I love you too. Alex ran up to them, his face smeared with dirt, his eyes bright. Papa, Daddy, come play. They joined him in the garden, and for a moment, everything was perfect. Oliver stood on the balcony of Moonhaven, watching the sun set behind the mountains. His hair was streaked with silver, his face lined with age, but his eyes were still the same, calm, steady, full of light. Damien stood beside him, his hand in Oliver's. They had been together for over 2 decades, and their love had only grown stronger. Alex was grown now, a young alpha with his father's strength and his mother's heart. He had taken over the sanctuary's operations, freeing Oliver to rest. The pups Oliver had raised were now adults, leaders, healers, guardians in their own right. You're brooding again, Damien said. I'm reflecting. Same thing. Oliver smiled. You've been listening to me for too long. I've been loving you for too long. Damien kissed his temple. And I'm not stopping now. Oliver leaned into him. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere. The stars emerged, one by one, and the world was quiet. Somewhere below, Alex laughed, and the pups howled, and the sanctuary hummed with life. Oliver had been sacrificed to a dead mafia alpha, but the alpha had never been dead, and somewhere between the curse and the healing, Oliver had found something he never expected. He had found a home, a family, a love that would last forever, and he was never leaving. 20 years after Oliver first walked into Damien's chamber, Moonhaven had become a beacon of hope for shifters across the continent. What had started as a single building had grown into a sprawling complex. Dormitories, medical wings, therapy rooms, and training grounds. Thousands of pups had passed through its gates, and many had stayed, becoming caregivers, healers, and leaders. Oliver had stepped back from day-to-day operations, trusting the next generation to carry on his work. But he still visited the sanctuary every morning, still sat with the newest arrivals, still let his scent fill the rooms with calm and safety. "You can't help everyone," Damien often said. "I can try," Oliver always replied. Their son, Alex, had grown into a remarkable young alpha. He had his father's dark hair and his mother's green eyes, and he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had been loved unconditionally. He had inherited Oliver's gift, not the moon wolf's healing, but something else, an ability to connect with the most broken pups, to reach them when no one else could. "You're going to take over Moonhaven someday," Oliver told him. "Not yet," Alex replied. "You're still here. I'll always be here, but you'll be the one running things." Alex smiled. "We'll run it together." When Alex was 22, a new danger emerged from the south. A rogue alpha named Silas Kane had been gathering followers, preaching that moonwolves were an abomination, that shifters should return to the old ways of dominance and submission. His message resonated with those who feared change, who resented the power Moonhaven had accumulated. "He's targeting the sanctuary," Damien said, his expression grim. "He's already attacked 2 shelters in the Southern Territories. Dozens of pups killed or taken." Oliver felt sick. "What does he want?" "He wants you. He believes that killing the last moon wolf will break the new order." "Then let him come." No, Damien's voice was firm. "You're not bait. I'm not suggesting bait. I'm suggesting we stop hiding. I've spent too long being afraid." Damien studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. "We do this together." The search for Silas Kane took them deep into the southern wilds. Damien led a team of his best operatives, with Alex at his side and Oliver in the center, protected but not passive. They tracked Silas through forests and mountains, following rumors and intercepted messages. The rogue alpha was clever, always moving, always staying one step ahead. But Oliver had an advantage Silas didn't expect. He could feel the pups, the ones Silas had taken, their fear, their pain, their desperate hope. It pulled at Oliver like a thread, drawing him forward through the wilderness. "He's holding them in an old fortress," Oliver said one evening, his eyes distant. 3 days north. Maybe less. Damien trusted him. They changed course. The fortress was ancient, its walls crumbling, its defenses minimal. Silas had chosen it for its isolation, not its strength. He hadn't expected anyone to find him. The assault came at dawn. Damien's team moved with practiced precision, breaching the gates, overwhelming the guards. Oliver stayed back, using his scent to calm the frightened pups, to keep them from panicking. Alex fought beside his father, his movements fluid and deadly. He had trained for years, and it showed. Silas's followers fell before him. Then Oliver saw him. Silas Kane stood at the center of the fortress, a blade in his hand, his eyes wild with fanaticism. Behind him, in cages, were the pups, dozens of them, thin and terrified. "Oliver Hart," Silas called out. "The abomination who thinks he can heal the world." Oliver stepped forward. "Let them go. They're not yours to free. They're not yours to cage." Silas lunged. Damien intercepted him, their blades clashing. The fight was brutal, but Damien was stronger, faster, more experienced. Within minutes, Silas was on his knees, defeated. "Kill me," Silas spat. No, Damien's voice was cold. "You'll face justice. You'll answer for every pup you've harmed." Silas laughed. "Justice? There's no justice in this world. Only power." "Then you've learned nothing." The guards took Silas away. Oliver opened the cages, one by one, and gathered the pups into his arms. They clung to him, trembling, crying, but alive. "You're safe now," Oliver whispered. "I've got you." The rescued pups were brought back to Moonhaven. Some were reunited with their families. Others had no families to return to. They stayed, becoming part of the sanctuary's ever-growing family. Oliver spent weeks with them, helping them heal, helping them trust. He didn't rush. He didn't push. He just stayed. And slowly, they began to smile. "You're good at this," Alex said, watching his father comfort a young pup who had refused to eat. "I had practice." "With me?" "With all of them." Oliver gestured to the pups playing in the courtyard. "Every one of them taught me something." Alex was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I want to be like you." "You already are." "No. I want to help people the way you do. Not with power, with presence." Oliver smiled. "Then you will." When Alex was 25, he fell in love. Her name was Lyra, a beta healer from the Eastern Territories. She had come to Moonhaven to study Oliver's methods and had stayed for something more. She was calm, intelligent, and fiercely kind. Everything Alex needed. "You're going to marry her," Oliver said, not asking. "I'm going to ask her. She'll say yes." Alex blushed. "You don't know that. I know love when I see it." Lyra did say yes. The wedding was held in the garden of the estate, beneath the same canopy of flowers where Oliver and Damien had bonded. The pups served as flower children, scattering petals with wild abandon. Oliver walked Alex down the aisle, his eyes bright with tears. Damien stood at the altar, waiting. "I'm proud of you," Oliver whispered. "Thanks, Papa." The ceremony was beautiful, the reception joyful. Oliver danced with Damien, with Alex, with Lyra, with the pups who had become family. For one perfect evening, the world was at peace. A year later, Lyra gave birth to twins, a boy and a girl, healthy and strong. They had Alex's dark hair and Lyra's gentle eyes, and when Oliver held them for the first time, he wept. "They're perfect," he whispered. "They're you," Damien said. "All over again." Oliver looked at his grandchildren, at his son, at his husband, and felt a gratitude so overwhelming it almost hurt. "I never thought I'd have this," he said. "A family, a home, a future." "You deserve it," Damien replied. "You always did." The twins grew quickly, their personalities emerging. The boy, Ethan, was calm and thoughtful, like Oliver. The girl, Elara, was fierce and protective, like Damien. They were inseparable, two halves of a whole. Oliver spent hours with them, telling stories, teaching them about Moonhaven, about the pups, about the power of staying. "Why do you help everyone, Grandpapa?" Elara asked one day. "Because everyone needs help sometimes," Oliver replied. "And because I had people who helped me when I needed it most." "Like Grandpapa Damien?" "Yes, like him." Ethan considered this. "I want to help people too." "Then you will," Oliver said. "When you're ready." Time moved forward, as it always does. Oliver's grandfather, the old beta who had raised him, passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was surrounded by family, by love, by the knowledge that Oliver had found his home. Oliver mourned, but he didn't break. He had learned that grief was not weakness. It was love, continuing. "He was proud of you," Damien said. "I know. He knew you would find your way." Oliver nodded, tears streaming down his face. I wish he could have seen this. Moonhaven, the pups, you. He saw you. That was enough. They held a memorial in the garden, and the pups sang a howl that echoed across the valley. It was a sound of sorrow, yes, but also of gratitude. When Oliver turned 60, he officially passed leadership of Moonhaven to Alex. The ceremony was small, just family, close friends, and the pups who had become leaders themselves. Soren, now silver-haired and gentle, spoke of Oliver's patience. Shade, still fierce, spoke of his courage. Trouble, still stealing pastries, spoke of his laughter. "You changed our lives," Soren said. "You gave us a home when we had none. You taught us that being broken doesn't mean being worthless." Oliver wept. Alex took the stage, his voice steady. "I promise to carry on your work, Papa. To protect this place. to protect these people, to never forget that love is stronger than fear. Damien stood beside Oliver, his hand in his. You did good, he said. We did good, Oliver replied. In his 70s, Oliver slowed down. He spent less time in the sanctuary and more time on the balcony, watching the sun set behind the mountains. Damien stayed with him, as he always had. Are you happy? Damien asked one evening. Oliver looked at him, at the man who had been dead, who had come back to life, who had loved him through everything. Happy, Oliver said. Happier than I ever thought I could be. Good. Damien kissed his forehead. Because I'm not going anywhere. Neither am I. The stars emerged, and the world was quiet. Somewhere below, the pups howled. A sound of joy, of promise, of home. Oliver closed his eyes and let the warmth of Damien's presence wrap around him. He had been sacrificed to a dead mafia alpha. But the alpha had never been dead. And somewhere between the curse and the healing, Oliver had found something he never expected. He had found a home, a family, a love that would last forever, and he was never leaving. Years later, when Oliver passed peacefully in his sleep, the entire territory mourned. Thousands gathered at Moonhaven to honor the man who had changed their world. Alex stood at the podium, his voice breaking. My father taught me that strength isn't about power. It's about staying. It's about showing up, every day, for the people who need you. Damien, now old and gray, stood at the back of the crowd, his eyes on the place where Oliver lay. He saved me, Damien said quietly. He saved all of us. Soren led the howl, a long, mournful sound that rose and fell, echoing across the valley. The pups joined in, then the caregivers, then the guards, then everyone. It was a sound of grief, but also of gratitude. Because Oliver Hart had lived. And because of him, so many others had too. The sanctuary continued. The pups kept coming. Alex and Lyra led with compassion and strength. Ethan and Alara grew into remarkable young shifters, carrying their grandfather's legacy forward. And Damien stayed. He visited Oliver's grave every morning, leaving flowers, talking to him about the day ahead. He never remarried. He never even looked at anyone else. He was my one, Damien told Alex. He was always my one. On the 50th anniversary of Moonhaven's founding, a final howl rose from the valley. It was led by the descendants of the original pups, Soren's children, Trouble's grandchildren, Shade's protégés. They sang a song that Oliver had written, a song about hope and healing and home. Damien listened from the balcony, his hand on the railing, his eyes on the sky. They're beautiful, a voice said beside him. Damien turned. No one was there, but he smiled anyway. Yes, he said. They are. The sun set, and the stars emerged, and the howl continued long into the night. Oliver was gone, but his legacy lived on. In every pup who found safety. In every healer who stayed. In every alpha who learned that love was stronger than fear. Oliver had been sacrificed to a dead mafia alpha. But the alpha had never been dead. And somewhere between the curse and the healing, Oliver had found something he never expected. He had found a home, a family, a love that would last forever. And even in death, he was never leaving. The years after Oliver's passing were quiet for Damien, but not empty. He rose each morning before dawn, as he had done for decades, and walked the short path from the main house to the small garden where Oliver's ashes had been scattered beneath an ancient oak tree. The tree had been planted the year they bonded, and it had grown strong and wide, its branches spreading like protective arms over the place where Oliver's body had returned to the earth. Damien would sit on the stone bench beneath it, his hands folded on his cane, and he would talk. He told Oliver about the pups who had arrived at Moonhaven the day before, about the arguments Alex and Lyra had over expansion plans, about the weather and the harvest and the small, ordinary miracles of daily life. He never expected an answer, but sometimes, when the wind moved through the leaves just so, He felt something brush against his cheek, light as a whisper, warm as a hand. He liked to think it was Oliver, reminding him that love didn't end when breath stopped. The sanctuary flourished under Alex's leadership. He had inherited his father's gentle patience and his mother's fierce intelligence, and he had learned from Damien the art of quiet strength. Lyra had become the sanctuary's head healer, her skills surpassing even Oliver's in some areas. She had a gift for surgery, for mending broken bones and torn flesh, while Oliver's gift had always been for mending broken hearts and frightened souls. Together, Alex and Lyra made Moonhaven a place where no shifter was turned away, where every pup was given a chance, where the old ways of fear and dominance were slowly replaced by trust and compassion. The old guard, Damien's lieutenants, the original pups Oliver had raised, had mostly retired or passed on, but their children and grandchildren filled the ranks, carrying forward the legacy with pride. Ethan and Alara, the twins, had grown into formidable young shifters. Ethan had inherited Oliver's quiet intensity, his ability to sit with the most traumatized pups and wait, patient as stone, until they were ready to trust. He had become the sanctuary's lead counselor, a role that suited his temperament perfectly. He spoke rarely, but when he did, people listened. Alara, by contrast, was all fire and motion. She had Damien's sharp instincts and her grandmother Elena's strategic mind, and she had taken over the security operations at Moonhaven, training a new generation of guardians to protect the sanctuary from those who would see it destroyed. The twins bickered constantly, but their bond was unbreakable. They finished each other's sentences, anticipated each other's moves, and would have died for each other without a moment's hesitation. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, Damien gathered his family in the great hall of the estate. He was old now, very old, his hair white, his face lined, his body frail. But his eyes were still sharp, and his voice, though soft, carried the weight of authority that had never diminished. "I won't be here much longer," he said, and the room went still. Alex started to speak, but Damien raised a hand. "I've had more time than I ever expected, more time than I deserved. Your father gave me that. He woke me from a death that should have been permanent, and he loved me through every day since." He looked at each of them in turn, at Alex, at Lyra, at Ethan and Alara, at the pups who had gathered in the doorway. "When I'm gone, don't mourn too long. Celebrate. Remember the good. And keep this place alive. That's all I ask." Alex knelt beside his father's chair, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "You're not going anywhere yet, Dad." Damien smiled. "No, not yet, but soon." He lived another 2 years. In that time, he saw Alara become a mother, a healthy baby girl with her father's dark hair and her mother's fierce spirit. He saw Ethan find a partner, a quiet beta named Mira who worked in the sanctuary's kitchens and who looked at him with the same steady devotion that Damien had once seen in Oliver's eyes. He saw Moonhaven expand again, adding a new wing for pregnant Omegas who had nowhere else to go. And he saw the pups he had helped raise become leaders in their own right, carrying Oliver's legacy forward with grace and courage. The night Damien died, a storm raged outside, thunder and lightning, wind and rain. But inside the great hall, the fire crackled warmly, and the family gathered around his bed. Alex held one hand, Alara held the other. Lyra sat beside him, her hand on his forehead, checking his pulse even though they all knew there was nothing to be done. Ethan stood at the foot of the bed, his face pale, his jaw tight. The pups, grown now, many of them, filled the room, their scents mingling with the smoke and the rain. Damien's eyes were closed, but he wasn't sleeping. He was listening to the storm, to the howl of the wind, to the distant cry of wolves in the forest. He had always loved storms. They reminded him of the night he had first opened his eyes and seen Oliver's face. "He's here," Damien whispered, and Alex leaned closer to hear. Your father. He's here. Alex looked around the room, saw only shadows, but he didn't argue. I know, Dad. Damien smiled. His hand tightened on Alex's, then relaxed. His breathing slowed, became shallow, then stopped. The room held its breath. Outside, the storm raged on, indifferent and eternal. And then, a sound, faint at first, then swelling. A howl, rising from the forest, answered by another, and another, until the valley echoed with the voices of wolves. It was the same howl that had risen when Oliver passed, the same song of grief and gratitude. Alex bowed his head, tears streaming down his face. Alara pressed her forehead against her father's hand. Lyra covered her mouth with both hands. Ethan turned away, unable to watch. They buried Damien beside the oak tree, next to the place where Oliver's ashes had been scattered. No marker, no stone, just the tree, the sky, and the memory of two men who had found each other against all odds. Alex spoke at the ceremony, his voice steady despite the crack in his heart. My father once told me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone who stays. Someone who sees you when you're broken and doesn't look away. He looked at the tree, at the shifting shadows beneath it. My fathers stayed. For each other. For us. For this place. And because they stayed, we're all here. The wolves howled again, and Alex fell silent, letting their voices carry his grief to the stars. In the years that followed, Moonhaven became something more than a sanctuary. It became a symbol, a testament to the power of compassion over cruelty, of healing over hatred. Shifters from across the continent traveled to see it, to learn from its methods, to carry its teachings back to their own territories. The old ways of fear and dominance did not disappear overnight, but they weakened, year by year, as more packs embraced the new order. Alex received letters from alphas who had once been enemies, thanking him for showing them a better way. Lyra trained healers who went on to save countless lives. Ethan and Alara, together, turned Moonhaven into a fortress of hope, its walls built not to keep people out, but to keep them safe within. Sometimes, late at night, when the sanctuary was quiet and the pups were asleep, Alex would walk to the oak tree and sit on the stone bench. He would close his eyes and let the silence wash over him, and he would imagine his fathers there, Oliver's calm presence, Damien's steady strength. He would talk to them about the day's challenges, about the joys and sorrows, about the future that stretched ahead. He never heard an answer, but he always felt something, a warmth, a reassurance, a sense that he was not alone. One night, as the moon hung full and bright above the mountains, Alex felt a hand on his shoulder. He opened his eyes to find Alara standing beside him, her face soft in the silver light. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Never can, on nights like this." She sat beside him, her shoulder brushing his. "I miss them too." They sat in silence, watching the shadows of the leaves dance on the ground. "Do you think they're proud of us?" Alex asked. Alara considered. "I think they're proud of who we are. Not what we've done, just who we are." Alex nodded. That was the lesson, wasn't it? Oliver had never loved him for his accomplishments, never valued him for his usefulness. He had loved him simply because he was his son. And Damien had loved with the same fierce, uncomplicated devotion. "I hope I can be like them," Alex said. "You already are," Alara replied. "You just don't see it." The wind shifted and the leaves rustled. For a moment, just a moment, Alex could have sworn he heard laughter, soft, warm, familiar. He smiled, and the ache in his chest eased. "Okay," he said. "I'll try to see it." The next morning, a new pup arrived at Moonhaven's gates. She was small and frightened, her fur matted, her eyes dull. She had been found wandering the forest alone, her pack lost to a rogue attack. No one knew her name. No one knew where she came from. She refused to eat, refused to shift, refused to speak. Alex sat with her for hours, not pushing, not demanding, just present. He let his scent fill the room, calm, steady, like moonlight on still water. He didn't try to fix her. He just stayed. After 3 days, she shifted. A small girl with dark hair and pale skin, her eyes huge in her thin face. "I'm Lily," she whispered. Alex smiled. "Welcome to Moonhaven, Lily. You're safe here." She looked at him, wary but curious. "Promise. Promise." She reached out and took his hand, and Alex felt the same warmth he had felt beneath the oak tree. The warmth of his father's, the warmth of legacy, the warmth of love that never died. Outside, the sun rose over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. The pups played in the courtyard, their laughter rising on the morning breeze. Lyra called to Alex from the kitchen, reminding him to eat breakfast. Alara shouted something about training schedules. Ethan waved from the garden, where he was helping Mira plant flowers. Alex held Lily's hand and walked her into the sanctuary. She would heal in time. She would learn to trust, to hope, to love. And one day, she would carry this place forward, as he had, as his fathers had, as all those who had come before. Oliver had been sacrificed to a dead Mafia Alpha. But the Alpha had never been dead, and somewhere between the curse and the healing, Oliver had found a home. Damien had been trapped in a dying body, waiting for a reason to live, and he had found one. Together, they had built something that would outlast them, something that would echo through generations. The sanctuary stood. The pups howled. The world turned. And love, fierce and enduring, remained. The decades turned, and Moonhaven grew not just in size, but in significance. It became a pilgrimage site for shifters seeking healing, a training ground for those who would carry the new ways to distant territories, and a symbol of what could be achieved when compassion replaced cruelty. Alex, now in his 40s, had aged into a figure of quiet authority, his father's gentle patience tempered by his mother's fierce protectiveness. He was not a moon wolf. That gift had died with Oliver, or so the scholars believed. But he had inherited something equally rare, the ability to make people feel seen. Pups who had been silent for months spoke their first words to him. Alphas who had been consumed by rage found themselves calming in his presence. Betas who had felt invisible discovered that he remembered their names, their stories, their fears. Lyra often teased him that he was more of a moon wolf than he realized, but Alex always shook his head. "No," he would say, "I just learned from the best." The sanctuary's operations had expanded beyond anything Oliver could have imagined. There were now satellite shelters in 3 neighboring territories, each run by graduates of Moonhaven's training programs. The medical wing had become a teaching hospital, attracting healers from across the continent who came to learn Lyra's surgical techniques and Oliver's holistic methods. The therapy wing, led by Ethan, had pioneered new approaches to trauma recovery that were being studied by pack healers everywhere. And the security wing, commanded by Alara, had developed a reputation for being both impenetrable and merciful. No one was turned away, but no one who threatened the sanctuary's peace was allowed to stay. The old enemies, the ones who had once plotted against Damien and Oliver, had either died or recanted. The new generation of rival families had grown up hearing stories of Moonhaven's power and had learned to respect its boundaries. For the first time in living memory, the Northern Territories knew a fragile, tentative peace. But peace, as Damien had often said, was never permanent. The threat came not from outside this time, but from within. A faction within the council, descendants of those who had once supported Lady Verrill, had been quietly undermining Moonhaven's authority for years. They spread rumors that Oliver had never truly been a moon wolf, that his supposed healing powers were elaborate frauds, that the sanctuary was a haven for criminals and runaways. They lobbied for restrictions on the sanctuary's funding, for inspections that would disrupt its operations, for the removal of Alex's leadership. At first, Alex ignored them, believing that the sanctuary's work spoke for itself. But the whispers grew louder, more persistent, until even the pups could sense the tension in the air. One evening, as Alex sat in his father's old study, the same study where Damien had once planned his campaigns and where Oliver had pored over ancient texts, Alara burst through the door, her face flushed with anger. "They're calling for a vote," she said, "to dissolve the sanctuary's charter, to turn it over to council control." Alex set down his pen, his expression calm but his heart racing. "On what grounds?" "They're claiming financial mismanagement. They've fabricated ledgers, hired witnesses, the whole thing. It's a coup, Alex." He stood slowly and walked to the window, looking out at the moonlit courtyard where pups played under the watchful eyes of their caregivers. "What would father do?" he asked, not really expecting an answer. Alara came to stand beside him. "He'd fight, not with violence, with truth. He'd show them who we really are." Alex nodded, his jaw tightening. "Then that's what we'll do." The council hearing was held in the great hall of Nightfall Keep, the same hall where Oliver had once stood trial. The room was packed with nobles, caregivers, journalists, and curious onlookers. The faction leaders sat at the head of the table, their expressions smug, their documents arranged in neat, damning piles. Alex entered with Alara on one side and Ethan on the other. Lyra walked behind them, her hand on his shoulder. The pups, now grown, now leaders in their own right, filled the gallery, their presence a silent reminder of what was at stake. The hearing lasted 3 days. The faction presented their evidence, forged ledgers, coerced testimonies, and a string of half-truths designed to paint Moonhaven as a corrupt enterprise. Alex listened patiently, taking notes, asking few questions. When it was his turn to speak, he stood and walked to the center of the hall. "My father, Oliver Hart, was sold to this family," he began, his voice steady. "He was brought here as a sacrifice, a pawn in a political game. But he chose to stay. He chose to heal. He chose to build something that would outlast him." He looked at the faction leaders, at their cold, calculating eyes. "Everything you've said about Moonhaven is a lie. But even if it weren't, even if we had made mistakes, even if we had mismanaged funds, would that erase the thousands of lives we've saved? Would that bring back the pups who found safety in our walls? Would that undo the healing, the hope, the love that has grown there?" The room was silent. Alex continued, "I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to look at the people in this room. Look at the pups who came to us broken and are now whole. Look at the alphas who learned that strength is not cruelty. Look at the omegas who discovered they were not worthless. Moonhaven is not a building. It's not a charter. It's not even a place. It's a promise. And that promise will not be broken by your lies." The faction leaders shifted uncomfortably. One of them stood, his voice shaking with anger. "You speak of love as if it were a weapon. But love cannot balance ledgers. Love cannot pay for medicine." Alex smiled, and it was Oliver's smile, warm, steady, unwavering. "Love has paid for everything we've ever needed. Because people believe in what we do. Because they give freely, without expectation. Because this sanctuary was built on trust, not contracts. And trust cannot be fabricated or destroyed by those who have never understood it." He turned to the gallery, to the crowd of witnesses. "Let them vote. Let them decide. But know that whatever they choose, we will not stop. We will not give up. We will continue to care for the lost, the broken, the forgotten. Because that is what Oliver taught us. That is what Damien protected. That is what we will always do." The vote was closer than anyone had expected. But in the end, Moonhaven's charter was upheld, the faction's claims dismissed, and the leaders who had orchestrated the attack were stripped of their positions. The pups howled in celebration, and Alex allowed himself a moment of relief before the weight of what had happened settled on his shoulders. He had faced the same council that had once tried to destroy his father, and he had won. Not through power, not through manipulation, but through truth. He walked to the oak tree that night, alone, and sat on the stone bench. "I hope I did okay," he said to the darkness. The wind rustled the leaves, and Alex could have sworn he felt a hand on his shoulder. Light, warm, familiar. He closed his eyes and listened to the silence, and for a moment, he was not alone. Moonhaven continued. The pups kept coming. The healers kept healing. And the legacy of Oliver and Damien, the boy who had been sacrificed and the man who had been dead, lived on in every life they had touched. Alex grew old, as his fathers had, and passed the leadership to his own children, and they to theirs. The oak tree grew taller, its branches spreading wider, its roots digging deeper. And sometimes, on quiet nights, when the moon was full and the wolves were silent, the people of Moonhaven could hear something, a whisper, a laugh, a howl, that sounded like two voices intertwined. It was the sound of love, enduring, and it would never, ever fade.